Why? Because this country is in danger. You heard the sheriff talking about it. This country is in jeopardy. Now, for my brothers and sisters that took the oath, you'll remember when you raised your right hand, whether it was a couple years ago or a couple decades ago, you promised to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you'll remember there was not an expiration date on that oath. It's a lifelong commitment. You're obligated for the rest of your life to continue preserving and protecting and defending against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We've got to continue keeping that oath because, again, this country is in jeopardy. If we don't act soon, we'll be the first generation in American history to leave this country weaker and poorer and less secure than we found it. Think about that. From the founding of this country, each generation's left it a little bit better. We'll be the first to leave it weaker if we don't act soon. Something else that you promised to do when you raised your right hand is you were making a commitment that this country is so precious that it's worth dying for. There are not many things in this life that are that precious. Your faith, your family, public safety, this country. These are the things that are worth fighting for and worth dying for. I've got no doubt that America is so precious that it's worth that kind of sacrifice. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. I want to start with a quick story. Who are my friends here that served in the Vietnam period? My Vietnam veterans. God bless you guys. When I came home from Iraq, we landed at this airfield. Our family's waiting in a hangar for us. We get off of a C-5 and we're kind of dreary-eyed from this transatlantic flight. We go walking into this hangar, 2 in the morning. These guys are in there holding flags. They had patches on their vests that said Vietnam veteran. I walked up to one of them and said, "What are you guys doing here at 2 in the morning?" They said, "When we came home, we didn't get the welcome we deserved. And we were going to make it right for your generation." Guys, that's what the American fighting man and woman does. They take something crappy and make it better. God bless the Vietnam veterans. Thank you, guys. Here's another story that I really don't share very often, but maybe a glimpse into why I'm doing this. In fact, I only started sharing this a couple months ago, and his family encouraged me to do that. I was sensitive about telling it before that. But I lost a teammate in Iraq, and I want to talk about him. His name was Dan Crabtree, Sergeant First Class Dan Crabtree. In fact, he was a Cuyahoga Falls police officer on their SWAT team, and on September 11th, he said, I know how to kick doors and shoot bad guys. I bet you the Green Berets could use me. He volunteered, ended up serving with me in Iraq. Well, I had one of my jobs was I always drove our lead vehicles in convoys. I drove the Humvee that led our convoy. I knew my way around pretty well, knew how to recognize roadside bombs and how to do what needed to be done. And so I always drove that lead truck, but I got called to a meeting in Baghdad one day. I was also in charge of our team budget, and I had to go meet with the fiscal officer and whatever else. So I get on a helicopter, 6 a.m. to fly up to Baghdad. Well, that day my team got called out to help a neighbor team, what you all would call mutual aid, but the team down the road had gotten into a little gunfight and they needed some help, and nobody was there to drive the lead truck. So the team sergeant said, "Who's got LaRosa's truck? Who's going to drive Frank's Humvee?" And Dan Crabtree said, "I'll do it." Kind of like when Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." Well, Dan said, I'll do that job. He got in the seat. My wife Lauren's picture was taped to the dashboard of that truck. And he got down the road a few miles, and that truck was blown up by a roadside bomb. I struggled with that. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. Why was it Dan and not me? Any other day of the year, it would have been me sitting in that seat. Dan was killed instantly, left behind a wife, and a beautiful young lady named Mallory, who's now a wonderful 18-year-old college student. Dan was brought home to see the Lord, and I was kept here. And I struggle with that. Why am I still here and he's not? After a lot of prayer, I think it's because I've got work to do. There's work to do here, and I think it's public service. And that's why I'm running. Now, let me talk about a couple issues. The economy. The Biden White House wants to convince you that the economy's great. I was on an interview just yesterday with a reporter who says, "Why do you keep talking about the economy? All the economic statistics say that, inflation's coming down, things are great, the economy's booming." I said, "For who?" Maybe for the 2 guys I'm running against that live off a stock portfolio, but for real Ohioans that have to earn a living work a gig job, have an hourly wage, this economy's not doing great for us. We sit at the kitchen table every month and wonder why all of a sudden everything costs more, but the wages haven't risen to keep up with it. The Biden-Brown economy is hurting families, and we know what to do about it. It's the old engine of human prosperity called the free market. We do it by getting government out of the way, by cutting taxes, by streamlining these wacky bureaucratic regulations, and we do it by drilling for oil and gas right here in Ohio so that we can have energy that works when the sun isn't shining and when the wind isn't blowing. What a novel idea that is. So we know how to repair an economy. The sheriff was talking about the border. Folks, I served on the U.S.-Mexican border. I was part of a counter-narcotics task force called Joint Task Force 6 when I was down there with the 101st Airborne Division. We would go out on patrol with the Border Patrol at night, and we would find people carrying precious children across the border, usually not their own. There go the good guys. We would find them carrying precious children across the border, and when we would search them, we would find bags of cocaine in their diapers. Now, first of all, there's a special place in hell for anybody that would risk the life of a child that way. They thought we wouldn't look there. Well, today it's not cocaine, it's fentanyl. And as you all know, tiny little specks of this stuff are deadly. We know what to do about it if we have the courage, but the problem is we've sent Republicans and Democrats to Washington that don't have the courage to do it. So-called Republicans that go there and won't actually work to get the border done. Heck, a bunch of them voted for this thing called the border bill a couple days ago that doesn't do anything to fix the border, just shovels a bunch of money to wasted causes. We need to actually secure the border. My solution's been very clear. The only entity that can end this invasion right now is the U.S. military. I've said we need to send 3 divisions down there temporarily. 3 divisions, as you all know, that's about 60,000 troops. They can secure the border long enough for the wall to get finished, long enough for us to get the Border Patrol plussed up the way they need, and we can end this invasion. We also need to be clear that we won't tolerate amnesty. If you break our laws, you won't get rewarded for it. That means no citizenship, no government benefits, no access to what's called the asylum process, where you come and say, hey, I was in danger in my old country, I need to stay here. No, if you come here illegally, you're not eligible for asylum as far as I'm concerned. And we also need to deport those that have come here illegally, because again, a law that's not enforced, a law that's not enforced is not a law. It's a suggestion, right? Now, well, we don't. In Ohio, now let's talk about my job. I'm the Secretary of State. And by the way, when I ran for re-election in 2022 as the Ohio Secretary of State, I was the only Secretary of State in the country to get endorsed by Donald Trump, and he's got pretty high standards when it comes to election integrity. We do some really crazy things, like taking dead people off the voter rolls on a monthly basis, checking IDs, requiring a paper ballot that we can audit, and we do audit them for every election. And by the way, yes, we make sure that only citizens can vote in Ohio. I've referred over 650 individuals to law enforcement because we caught them trying to vote as non-citizens. And guess what? When a non-citizen votes or tries to vote and they get convicted of a felony, that makes them immediately eligible for deportation. So there you have it. A couple other issues, and listen, it's not good enough to just have somebody that says they're a conservative. We got a lot of people that say that. Anybody running in a Republican primary is going to call themselves a conservative. Heck, even the 2 guys that I'm running against say they're conservatives, even though their voting record is very different from that. I'm the only lifelong Republican running. In a 3-way Republican primary, I'm the only one that's never been a registered Democrat. I think that tells you something. I'm also the only one with a 100% pro-gun voting record. You heard the sheriff talk about this. A disarmed society is vulnerable. It's self-defense, shooting sports, hunting, national defense too. The founders knew that. The founders knew that an armed country could defend itself. Israel found out the hard way that when people are disarmed, that it can cause real problems. I believe the Second Amendment is very clear. It says shall not be infringed. That's why I have a 100% pro-gun voting record, and because of that, I just received word that I'm getting a really amazing endorsement. I wanted the gentleman in charge of that group to share that.
My name is Sean Maloney. I'm one of the legislative directors of Buckeye Farms Association. Since I was a small child, there was always farms in my life. I grew up on a farm. We target shot with my grandparents. We hunted. And then as I grew forward in life, my job became more about protecting our right to keep and bear arms. And so I've been doing that for quite a long time. As a legislative director of Buckeye Farms, I can tell you that I've testified in the State House countless times in Frank's committees. He has never turned his back on the civil right, the Second Amendment. He's always been there for us, no matter who was against him. He never turned his back on us. So I wanted to announce that Buckeye Farms Association has wholeheartedly given him an A+ rating and endorsed him and will fight for him in the United States Senate.
It's also important to note that I'm the only candidate with a 100% pro-life voting record. And fighting for life is something important. You all seem to do that. And when it comes to cutting taxes and streamlining regulations, I'm the one that's proven on it. Listen, as I told you, the mission is to defeat Sherrod Brown, to replace him with somebody that's actually going to bring our values to the United States Senate. Let me share just two other things with you. I'm going to be the first Green Beret to ever serve in the United States Senate in history. I think that counts for something. And just this week, the only member of the Senate still wearing the uniform retired from the Marine Corps. A guy named Dan Sullivan, the US Senator from Alaska, a Marine Colonel, just retired from the Marine Reserve. And so he grabbed me when I was in D.C., by the way, in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, saying that the U.S. Supreme Court should be clear that Donald Trump should be on the ballot. But he grabbed me and said, we're counting on you because when you get elected, you'll be the only member of the Senate who still wears the uniform. The only one. And who are my fellow enlisted men? I'm a sergeant. I'm an E7, not an officer, by the way, so I think that's good too. Listen, the backbone of the Army, right? We love our officers. They can do risk assessments and paperwork, and we'll be busy killing the bad guys. All right. Little enlisted man pride. I'm asking for two things. This is a year-long job interview. I'm standing in front of my potential employers, and I'm asking you to hire me for a job. I'd ask you to give it some thought. The decision comes up between now and March 19th. That's when you have to choose who your party's nominee for U.S. Senate is going to be. I'm asking for your vote, but I'm also asking for your prayers. I don't take that for granted. In fact, I know that prayer works. It has in my life. Spent a lot of time praying when I was in combat zones. I'm sure some of you have as well. So please do keep us in your prayers. With your vote and with your prayers, I'll defeat Sherrod Brown in November, and we will save this country and keep the oath that we've all made. God bless each and every one of you. God bless America. All right, I've given him the floor just because he's a fellow Green Beret. Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Airborne! Airborne. I want to say, you know, I'm a Green Beret with a Gallantry Cross and a Bronze Star for killing. And I was a company commander for 200 Cambodians. I was a battalion medic for 6. And out of the 60 that graduated, 30 went. And out of the 30 that went, I could count 15 was dead when I'm left. Now, I want to say this. I appreciate people when they come back and they say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. It gets kind of mundane because I want to tell you, not everybody served on the front line. And when you serve on the front line, you got to have courage. And courage builds character. And I want you to know that you got to have character when you go up there and you stand up there in the politics. My wife was the one that was able to pass the law that made law enforcement officers mandated reporters of child abuse. Ohio was the last state in the union where law enforcement was mandated reporters of child abuse, and Frank LaRose was the one on the Republican side that helped push it through.
Yeah, all right.
When them goddamn Democrats,
Preach.
when they blocked her, they got jealous because she was not like the rest of them. She was a maverick. And I was there because I had to back her up and protect her. She said she married me because I was a thug and she knew I'd take somebody's life. And that's right. That's right. And so when they blocked her from going into the Democratic caucus room and had the sergeant of arms and the attorney standing in the doorway, and they already had wrote up the thing that she was kicking the attorney in the groin and all that. They already wrote that up. Well, we ended up taking that to the state house. They didn't do nothing. We took it to the city. they turned it down, tampered with the records and turned it down. We went to the Judge Sargis. He wouldn't let us have no depositions, and they turned it down. We took it to the state Supreme Court. They're supposed to write up something. They didn't write it up and turned it down. We took it down to the Sixth Circuit Court. They took forever and went back 100 years and said they had the right to do it.
So that's the Democratic Party for you. That's the Democratic Party, and that's what you learn. And if you don't have a person there, with experience, like they're talking about putting, what is his name, Bernie Moreno, our Franklin County Republicans decided to endorse him. They don't even understand. He's on a learning curve. He will go along to get along because he doesn't know anything. We need somebody there that knows what it is to be in politics, to be working with people, both Democrat and Republicans, because you're there for the American people. And that's what Frank is. And I thank you for Frank.
There's some pizza on that table, and that beer over there is not going to drink itself. So let's bring this thing in for a landing. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for being here. All right.